Russo's brand family. We are family.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have got a run-in. Mikey Messier has joined us. What's up, man?
Well, I wanted to chime in, bro. JG, I really appreciated, the sentiment, the heartfelt sentiment, and kind of pulling the curtain back on generating heat, your own kind of, involvement, and now, withdrawing from involvement from that, Star the offshoot convention for the all-in event.
Yeah.
And I had a busy day, bro, and I basically wanted to chime in and just kind of, for the listeners, maybe just to catch them up a little bit, if they're only hearing us and not your previous podcast, basically to summarize, this all-in event that Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks have been promoting has successfully sold, 10,000 seats, over 10,000 seats, and more power to them. And on a very personal level, congratulations to them. Everything else,
exactly, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything else to the side, that's good for wrestling. Where it gets a little, heated or personal for guys like me and you that do have, and as you put it, loyalty is a big thing with, for Vince Russo and what he's going through right now, with Cody Rhodes especially. And also there's other players involved in this situation. I mean, we're talking this Ryan Satin individual who I guess has kind of claimed himself to be the heir apparent to Dave Meltzer. Maybe I'm wrong in saying that, but that's what it seems to be. And kind of your own involvement. And on a real personal level, I just want to kind of back you up in saying that I do think that you made a tough decision, but probably, most definitely, not even probably, but definitely the right decision. Because if your heart's not into something, then you're not going to give it your best. And, so to catch people up on the summary of it, basically Cody Rhodes apparently, and some of this stuff is under, subterfuge, or it's hard to say exactly what happened, but apparently at one point Vince Russo was going to go to this, Starcast himself. But some people online on Twitter kind of reacted negatively to his name being bountied about or released. And they kind of Twittered at Cody. And some of this is speculation, I think, from Vince Russo's part, because, of course, nobody really wants to come out and say they did something like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But apparently, if that thought is to be believed, and so that, just put that disclaimer out there, if the thought is that Cody kind of reacted to pressure from some internet fans who didn't like the thought of Vince Russo breathing the same air as them at this convention of podcast folks at the all-in kind of offshoot podcast convention, that, lo and behold, Cody kind of, listened to those fans or maybe had his own opinions, although apparently he and Vince Russo have never met. And also it's quite evident, Vince Russo has a lengthy interview with Terry Runnels, which would be basically Cody's former sister-in-law.
Yeah.
And so basically Cody is the uncle, if I've got the lineage right, just like any other family. Cody's the uncle of Terry Runnels' daughter, Dakota, who kind of has a little minor celebrity thing going herself. And I've checked out some of her, YouTube videos. Right. So Dakota has her own little thing going, and that's, essentially Cody's niece. Now, the mother of the niece, Terry Runnels, who we all remember as Marlena, has a very long interview online with Vince Russo. I mean, I watched a lot of it just by coincidence.
It's full suit on kayfabe commentaries.
Right. And so it's like, hey, buddy, Cody doesn't know me from a hole in the wall, but it's like, Cody, the mother of your own niece is talking to this guy for hours. And they obviously have a very personal relationship. They're mentioning things that fans from that Attitude Era are familiar with, the Goldust character, the troubles that Goldust or Dustin Rhodes, Cody's brother, was having at the time. And of course, Terry's being very polite about it. And Vince is kind of, doing the Howard Stern thing, pushing for more information. And of course, a lot of information was already shared in Dustin Rhodes' own book.
Yeah.
About addictions and so forth, and things that wrestlers go through. So the point is, it's not like this Vince Russo was a total stranger to Cody's world, you would think, unless there's some, and I don't want to speculate, but you would think that if Cody Rhodes really had an issue or wanted to have an issue with a guy like Vince Russo, or suspected that his mere presence would somehow throw off the feel-good vibe of this all-in show or this podcast offshoot, why couldn't he just pick up the phone, call his own brother, say, hey, Dustin, what do you know about Vince Russo, and have a conversation? And I think that's probably where this whole train got off the tracks, if there is one, which is just people don't communicate anymore. They communicate through Twitter, through Facebook, through LinkedIn, Instagram, all the speculation, as our buddy, or at least, Bruce Pritchard says, and Conrad Thompson, rumor and innuendo, that can lead people to these type of judgments or these type of preconceived notions. That being said, moving forward in the story, the anecdote here is that how this involved you is that in the meantime, before all this shit hit the fan, you were applying to be part of Podcasters Row, and you really explained it quite thoroughly, that you had to kind of put down some money to be a part of this thing, as kind of that new voice type of niche, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so you had to kind of apply, put some money down. You went through the trouble of getting a sponsor. Next thing you know, you got to figure out, okay, what do I do to get my money back? Can I charge people $20 an autograph, $10 an autograph, a picture, sell some merch, get another sponsor? So you got to hustle this thing. This is not something that's guaranteed that you're even going to get your money back.
No. And as a matter of fact, I wasn't even expecting to get money back on it. You know what I'm saying? I was probably going to come close to even. I would hope that was the hope behind it, is after travel and everything, I could get as close to even as possible and just network. That's pretty much what it was for me, was a network, kind of get the podcast out there and get some more things going. With that being said, like you said, it just got to be to where, everything else that ended up going down after the All-In press conference yesterday, which is the video that is posted on the Generating Heat YouTube channel as of right now. Y'all can go on there and check that out. But
right, and it's JG. But the thing is, you don't know what could have happened. You don't know. There was no guarantees anything really sustainable would happen. You'd probably have a good time. Let's face facts. You go into a wrestling, you're meeting a lot of cool wrestling people, and you probably pick up some hints. You probably make you if nothing else, you'd get to see Disco in person, talk to him, Disco Inferno, get some people on your show. In a sense, from a business perspective, it's hard to put a number or a figure on that type of experience.
right.
But at the same time, and like myself, like you, we are men of honor. We are men of loyalty. And if it's gnawing at your belly the whole time you're there, like, man, like, why isn't Russo here? Or I can't believe these guys are bullying around Russo about this, rumor, innuendo, or this speculative BS, or the power of people to blackball people is so effective now.
Before the name calling and stuff came out, I was still gonna go. I got the blessings from people from the brand, and talked to some friends about it and about what I should do and things like that. Kind of explained the whole situation, and the consensus was I should probably go ahead and do it. But then once that video came out and Cody blatantly and irresponsibly and recklessly called Vince Russo a homophobe, that just started eating at me. And how can I, like he said, how can he reward bad behavior? Well, Cody, how can I reward your bad behavior? By giving you money. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right. And you got it. And it's like, Cody, where is Cody coming from on this thing? And it kind of, you know, unless I'm really missing something, and I even put that online a few times. Am I missing something? Question mark. I put that out there. And so far, JG, no one really has filled me in if I'm missing anything. I mean, yeah, like it's funny because I'm in all these, you know, to be exact, Facebook groups and a couple of Twitter feeds, and a couple of people have said, you know, things about Vince, and I say, hey, where's the evidence or where's the history? And people are basically, the extent of it is, well, some wrestlers said that Vince is such and such. And I said, oh, okay, can you cite that information? Can you provide a link? And nobody really can. Well, guess what, JG? I did my own research, and I mean, it's simple enough. I went to YouTube. I just put, you know, I put the keywords in there to find some stuff. Yeah. And basically, I mean, to summarize it and not dig up old history on anybody, but it's on the public domain. It's been addressed, all these stories. And it seems like April 2017, a couple of things came out around the same time. One of them, the homophobic thing. Well, basically, I guess that was more recent, which is Vince Russo took some issue with, specifically, it seems, NXT fans in Orlando and kind of how they are responding to the wrestlers these days. Yeah. And in that kind of, you know, conversation or that rant, he also threw in, you know, some podcaster guys, some well-known podcaster guys, and their kind of their infatuation with specifically Johnny Gargano's stomach, like his abdominal muscles, you know, and just kind of a thing where Russo was making a little fun, maybe probably pointedly, at some of this fanboy stuff, which basically what he was implying, or basically outright saying, was borderline homoerotic. You know, just the fans kind of, you know, not saying, hey, I love Ricky Steamboat because he's a great wrestler, but I love, you know, Gargano because of his abs, you know, and just kind of a thing where Russo's taking note that and one guy, apparently some wrestling journalist, you know, made a reference that he was feeling erect at the thought of a Roman Reigns Big Show match. And
yeah, he did. Said right on his podcast.
I would hope that was out of sarcasm, because I mean, if anything's going to get you, it can't be a Roman Reigns Big Show match. I would like to think that that's sarcasm, even with the metaphor being understood that you probably wouldn't feel sexually aroused by that match. But if there was a match to feel sexually aroused, why in the hell would it be that match? I mean, that match is horrible. You know what I mean? But
exactly. And I know, and that was all taken way out of proportion. He might have said, and matter of fact, I know he did. He said that, you know, wrestling fans who are like that, you know, they might be a little gay. They might need to come out of the closet or whatever. But then nowhere in there did he ever say that there was anything wrong with that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean, yeah, he didn't say there was anything wrong with that. It was kind of a, I mean, who's to say what's in somebody's heart or their mind? But if you simply look at it and kind of put a little grain of salt or a little comedy in the mix and say, is it possible that Russo was kind of lambasting these fans for a certain, you know, I mean, look, indie-rific is what it's been called. And now that indie-rific, you know, mentality or vibe, whatever you want to call it, kind of does rule NXT. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, at least in Orlando. And it's like, look, I'm sorry. I mean, if you do want to talk about Johnny Gargano's abs or something, it's not like back in the day, you know, guys would say, man, that Rick Rude, he's got great abs. But to kind of fawn or fanboy over it, Maybe that's where Russo took issue with it. Who's to say? So that's apparently, from what I can tell, that, and now get this, on Facebook today, I was going back and forth about this with somebody because I was sharing Vince Russo's defense of himself. And somebody, I think you saw this, somebody took issue with Vince and called him racist and homophobic. And I said, hey, please, where's the evidence? And they said, well, we'll use Google. Use Google to find the evidence.
Put Google.com. Wouldn't know backslash to any kind of site that could possibly put this into, truth to help his sake. It was just Google. He said Google. Yeah. I can Google my mom. I can Google myself. And I can tell you right now, the things that you'll find on Google about me, there's some things that are not true. I already tell you.
Right. And it's like, well, wait a minute. The guy who was responding, who I've gone back and forth with wrestling debates in the past, and I just kind of knew enough to leave this guy alone because it really is going to get nowhere quick. But my point to this particular wrestling fan, who I trust is a good guy in his own way, was just, hey, if you can't cite a situation and you're just telling me to Google it, and here, if we're taking the time to go back and forth about this, and you could make a point that all of this is a waste of time, but why not go ahead and tell me what you're thinking? And so the guy came back with, okay, gold dust. That was his response. And I'm like, wait a minute. Gold Dust is still making money being Gold Dust. If you're saying that Gold Dust proves Vince Russo to be homophobic, well, where is, and then I made the point. I came back strong, as I always do, and I said, hey, if we're going to debate, let's debate. So I said, how come when people, and I took it, see, sometimes when I get on Facebook and you get into heated stuff with someone, sometimes what I do is I try to take it off the specific and move to the general. And I said, how come it is when people blame the Attitude Era, whatever they think is the fault or the bad part of the Attitude Era, they always manage to bring up Vince Russo? Well, WCW collapsed, Vince Russo, or the Attitude Era had beaver cleavage, it's Vince Russo, or this, that, or the other thing. And how come when they want to credit the Attitude Era, they credit, of course, Vince McMahon, they credit Steve Austin, they credit The Rock, and maybe if they're feeling lucky or sparky, they'll credit DX or Mick Foley, or Undertaker. But for the most part, if they credit the Attitude Era, it's Austin and The Rock, maybe Vince McMahon, but they never credit Russo. But if they want to, piss on or discredit the Attitude Era, the guy they go to is Russo.
and look, here's what a lot of those Mark fans don't realize is that, yes, exactly, Vince McMahon was there to filter Russo's bad ideas away. We all get that. We all know that. And we saw that. But what they don't understand is the actual character development that he brought to Rock, to Stone Cold, to, Undertaker, changing into the Ministry of Darkness, The Rock going from corporate rock to superstar rock and the Nation and all that. DX going from Shawn Michaels and Triple H into the New Age Outlaws and X-Pac, and then he went over to WCW, which was already a sinking ship.
Right.
They had started sinking. Halloween Havoc, 1998. Put the nail in the coffin for WCW. They brought Vince Russo in to try and save the Titanic from sinking, and it just didn't work. That's what they don't understand.
Right, correct. And you said it very well. And it's like these fans, and if they're feeling froggy on Vince Russo, they'll throw him onto the WCW bus. If they're feeling froggy on Eric Bischoff, well, then it's his fault. And lo and behold, I think it's actually Eric Bischoff, not Russo, who's articulated the best from my readings and listenings to audio podcasts and so forth. Eric Bischoff basically said that once Ted Turner didn't have that personal control or power anymore at Time Warner, Turner, it was the higher ups that had a distaste for wrestling. They thought it was lowbrow. And once they saw those ratings slip, even though the ratings were slipping, but there were still great ratings compared to any other program on the network, and TNT, it made life so much easier for those, would-be highbrow network types to get rid of pro wrestling and WCW and not give it a sense of adrenaline or a sense of creative, or even scale it back if they had to. I mean, WCW, a couple of times, they went to center stage, or they wouldn't do house shows, just to keep the business going because it was a successful television program. You compare the ratings of those last couple of years of WCW, compare those ratings with the current WWE ratings. I mean, which one's higher? You know what I
mean? And another thing is people don't like to mention a lot is the fact that Howard Schiller, whoever, whatever his name was, Howard, we'll call him Howard, who was Vince Russo's, executive supervisor and was signing off on all the deals that Eric was making. He could have nixed any of those in the bud and be like, no, we're not giving creative control to this guy. We're not giving creative control to this guy. And that could have helped out a lot too. I think he was just there signing whatever Eric put in front of him, though, because he didn't know that much about the wrestling business, but he does know about the contract business. He does know about dollars and cents, and a wrestler having control of their own destiny is not in the best interest of the company, as we saw at Bash at the Beach 2000 whenever it was played, and it was played on a very public forum.
Correct. And you got it. And it's just like, creatively, people could take issue with Vince Russo and some of his decisions. They could say, well, they didn't like David Arquette as champion. They didn't like Vince Russo as champion. And those points, guess what? I'd probably agree with. I don't think that.
But nobody's ever mentions Vince McMahon was ECW champion.
Or WWF World Champion.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, basically, you're surprised. We're surprised that Vince McMahon didn't go ahead and put the WCW belt on himself just so he could be a triple world champion, or restart Vern Gagne's AWA for a week just so he could put the AWA belt on himself. There is so much hypocrisy. I want to address this other thing. Let me just bang this out on Vince McMahon real quick. Vince McMahon. People love to forget this one, although it's clearly on YouTube. It's clearly on, the WWE, or at the time it was still WWE because it was 2006. Vince McMahon said the N-word in front of John Cena, and then Booker T and Sharmell are like 6 or 7 feet away, and I've watched that clip, and it's purely silly. It's purely stupid. Is it terribly? It's what's offensive about it is that it's so poorly. It just makes no point. There's no sense to it.
Made no point, and it wasn't like Vince is out here on the streets like some of these white kids are out here today and living the street life, and that's actually part of their vocabulary. That's what made it silly.
Right, and it did have a feel. This was some WWE 2006 pay-per-view. I'm not sure even which pay-per-view it was. I don't know if it was a Judgment Day or a SummerSlam, but basically they have some backstage segment at the pay-per-view where Vince McMahon approaches John Cena, and he's trying to play the doofy white guy trying to be hip, and he basically calls John Cena my end, so to speak, and then Cena kind of has a what the hell look on his face, and then Vince turns the corner. He passes by Booker T, who I want to say was doing the King Booker gimmick, and Sharmell kind of genuinely looks disgusted or genuinely looks what the fuck. And Booker T does his trademark, tell me he just didn't say that, And I'm just trying to think, between all the people, say 10 people had to be present for that little skit, right? Cena, Booker T, Sharmell, 2 or 3 cameramen, some type of producer, whoever it would have been that was there. didn't one person say, you know, Vince McMahon, all due respect, sir, this is a really dumb idea. You know, couldn't someone have just spoken up, whether it was Cena or anybody else, and just say, is this setting up to a Cena McMahon match, or a Cena versus Booker T, or Booker T versus Vince, which would have made the most sense? I mean, if you wanted to turn Booker T babyface for that moment, you could have just had Vince kind of cross him, Booker T grab his arm, you know, Titus O'Neil style, you know, 10 years later, and say, tell me you just didn't say that, sucker. And then, but you could have done something.
At the time that this happened, WWE was in a really low place at this time.
Right.
They had, you know, everybody was gone except for Michael P.S. Hayes and Bruce Pritchard. They were still around.
Right.
I think Heyman had just lost his job. I think the plane ride from hell had just happened.
Right.
You know, so there was everybody that was around McMahon at that time were yes men. They're just going to go along with anything.
And the thing is,
just for no apparent reason.
It was just horrible, JG. And around that time, you know, 2006, I was still watching, you know, WWE. Believe it or not, I actually enjoyed the first year of WWECW, which people will laugh at that, but I thought the first 6 months to a year was pretty good of that show.
Man, I thought the first episode was all right. And then I couldn't watch it anymore, really. It wasn't the same. I was an old school ECW guy. I used to drive from West Virginia to Philly once a month on Saturday. I would leave at 5 a.m. and I would get up there at 1:30, and I would sit in the parking lot from 1:30 until showtime, 7, 8, whatever it was. And so I'm an old school ECW guy. And so that just wasn't sitting with me.
And that's a great story, man. Did you go to the Barely Legal show? Did you go to that one? No,
I didn't start going until my senior year of high school, so that I was working on Saturdays, but I would call in sick from work and not tell my parents. And we would drive to Philly and go to the show, and then be back home before my parents woke up for church Sunday morning.
That's pretty cool, man. I like that story. And see, that type of thing you just told, that's what a real wrestling fan will do. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Going back to this racism thing, because some people were throwing out the old racism barb on our buddy Vince Russo. So I'm like, okay, look, no one's providing me any real evidence. The same guy that I mentioned earlier was saying, I've talked to wrestlers who told me that Vince Russo is a racist. And I'm wondering, do these wrestlers, when this particular wrestling fan goes to these guys, do the wrestlers sign an autograph for him? And, you know, dear wrestling fan, thanks for buying my T-shirt. P.S. Vince Russo is a racist. You know what I mean? But going back to that, what was really happening, I guess, not even I guess, I just did, you know, the simple YouTube research. Vince had a really bad situation at an airport. And it's kind of it's an unpleasant story. And the way that he told it was very raw, you know, very honest, very, you know, not mincing words, but he didn't use, you know, as far as I could tell, racial epithets Vince Russo, to summarize, had a really bad experience at Atlanta, Georgia airport. Basically everyone that he came in contact with through airline security, and I think he said TSA, I could be wrong. They were, you know, African-American people doing their jobs. One woman in particular, you know, had an issue with Russo, or he had an issue with her, or they had an issue against each other. And Russo was not terribly, sensitive in describing the woman. Didn't use racist comments, but just one of those things where I listened to it, and it just, the anger that Russo expressed, you could relate to it if you've ever been in a situation where you felt anger or you felt victimized. You're going to say things that are going to be insensitive. You're going to say things that are going to come off not calm, cool, and collected. And I think that's where Vince Russo was at. And rather than, talk to a therapist or talk to a family member or a friend about this situation, Vince took to the airwaves and, expressed his anger on his podcast. And in this day and age, that's what people do. Yeah. People have podcasts or they have a morning
business.
Oh, yeah.
I don't see as much in other professions, but in the wrestling business, that's how the old timers stay relevant, is by airing all the dirty laundry on podcasts.
Right. And so Vince, went and he told this story. And then I did the follow-up research, and he basically did a follow-up, situation a few months or a few weeks later where, this individual, Ryan Satin, and someone who Vince didn't name, but I guess a guy went through the trouble of taking Vince Russo's airline story, chopping it up to a 2 or 3 minute take, and then using that video to really rally against Vince Russo. And one person who got a hold of that, I guess, was Ryan Satin, who I don't really know too much about, and I've never had any interactions with him. I do follow him somehow on Twitter, and I see his stuff, and so far I haven't really seen anything too provocative one way or the other.
I can tell you some things about Ryan Satin, but that could be a whole other episode on its own. I have had a few very negative dealings with Ryan Satin. You want to know about Ryan Satin, you go on YouTube and you type in Ultimate Warrior Ryan Satin, and that'll tell you what kind of person Ryan Satin is right there, because they were filming the Warriors documentary that he was shooting right before his death. And Ryan Satin was still working for TMZ at the time, and they ended up in the same place at the same time. And yeah, I don't want to spoil it for you because it is great. You just got to go on there and watch it.
I did see something that was before Warrior died, I think, right before he died. Warrior was all kind of warriored out with the short, spiky, kind of grayish hair, pepper and salt gray. And he didn't dye his hair, man. He just let it go pepper and gray. And he's got a couple of guys from TMZ.
Yeah, one of those guys is Ryan Satin.
Oh, okay. That was making sense. I didn't put that together. So basically, Warrior's just kind of talking to these guys, and he's kind of calling them out before they even aired anything. He said, I don't want to, because it's been a while since I watched this video, but he's basically, to condense it, from my memory, Warrior's saying, yeah, well, you're the guys that kind of use tricky editing to, put a message across. Yeah. And those guys are, of course, baby-facing themselves and, deny. And then lo and behold, when the footage comes out, guess what? Warrior pretty much predicted what was going to happen.
Yeah, he did. And they had sent some stuff into WWE for the Warrior DVD that they did. What was it called? The bad one.
The Ultimate Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah. Or Warrior Self-Destruction or something like that. Yeah, they had sent some clips in for that. And that's where the whole thing got started.
And, man, we've got so many things we could talk about. But you know what? When people, and just to throw this in the mix, why the hell not? Because we're here. When people, and rightfully so, have issue with some of the things that Warrior said, like I just said, rightfully so, Warrior said some mean things about Bobby Heenan and cancer and so forth. What people tend to forget, or they do not know, I believe Bobby the Brain, and I do like Bobby the Brain quite a bit, so don't get me wrong, but Bobby the Brain was part of that video, and it was a real character assassination on the Ultimate Warrior. So look, Ultimate Warrior, 260 pounds or whatever, and he's not impervious to having his feelings hurt. He's not impervious to feeling attacked. And when he's got all these guys in this business, whether he was friends with them or not, kind of running him down on this commercial video that's being released for money, and he feels that it's a gang attack on him, then who wouldn't come out throwing low blows left and right? Who wouldn't come out throwing insults left and right?
Yeah.
Is that to defend what he said about cancer? No. It's to understand he was coming from a place of hurt, a place of damaged pride, of a place of feeling betrayed. And some people will listen to me say this, and I can hear them now saying Messier defends Warrior. Well, guess what? I already have a YouTube video that I taped last summer That's Messier defends the Warrior, because I met Ultimate Warrior myself, JG, and my personal experience with the guy was terrific.
Mine was I've met him on 3 different times. I was at a convention with him one time back in 2010 when he was doing his motivational speaking deal, and
right.
Man, I tell you, he was awesome to me. He was awesome to my kid. You know, I thought he was very genuine. I met Dana too. Dana's very nice. We could definitely have another conversation about the whole Warrior Award and everything about that, because that's not what he had in mind for a Warrior Award, what they're doing right now. But we'll save that for another time as well.
Right. And the basic summary was that Warrior thought there should be a behind-the-scenes crew member award for the WWE staff, is what I think.
Yeah, the summary exactly was like a staff, maybe the even like ring announcers or stuff like that. Just somebody that goes above and beyond to help the production of the show was my understanding of what he wanted the Warrior Award to be. But they've done their own thing with it, but whatever.
You could talk about, for instance, I mean, not that I'm giving out the Warrior Award or anything like it, but I mean, who was it, Jacques or someone, or Francois, who Mick Foley always cites as the little chiropractor guy? Not to say little, but he was a smaller guy, Francois, who was like the chiropractor of all these guys. And he said that, Francois would take Mick Foley's back and say, man, Mick, you have a back like a crocodile. And he would, do all these manipulations on Mick Foley's back.
Yeah. And
Mick loved him for it, because you wouldn't have half the matches, if that, of Mick Foley going through hells and cells and so forth and so on. But I mean, basically, as far as the character of our friend Vince Russo, this is kind of my sum up is this. If people who are listening to this podcast, whether it's on YouTube or your podcast channel or wherever else, if they have some type of citation, if they feel the need to share it, go ahead and share it. But I mean, from the research I found today, and look, I'm not doing a thesis on this. I mean, this is not dominating my life, believe it or not. But I basically found these were the 2 stories. The Russo kind of, talking about the fans at NXT and kind of this fanboy-ish stuff, and just, making light of it, or just kind of thinking it was a little bit off to him. And then the whole Atlanta airport story, which, I mean, once again, to me, that's a story that it can just be – it just sounds like the bow that Russo could have put on it, which he didn't, which at least I didn't see that he did, was – wow, I experienced a situation that was so unjust to my feelings, from my perspective, that I can really appreciate how African Americans and other folks have felt when discriminated against. I was in a situation where, as a white man, I was the only white man around. I felt that I was ignored. I felt that I was discriminated against. And now I can truly appreciate what civil rights leaders and people in America today that are being discriminated against, whether it be by the police or other authority figures who have, a complex of power or discrimination or whatever they have. I can now feel what it's like to be in those shoes, and what can we do as a society to get around that or to make that better. And from what I saw, and I didn't see everything that Vince said, but maybe he didn't put the bow on it. Like, he didn't put the positive spin on it. Guess what? Even if he put the positive spin like I just attempted to, people would still find issue with him bringing up the topic at all. You know what I mean?
Yep. And that's just it. So I want to go ahead and wrap this up for tonight. Say, Cody Rhodes, you can kiss my ass. We will not be paying your unreasonably large fee of $600 to partake in StarCast. I have no heat whatsoever. I will say this. I cannot say this enough. I have no heat whatsoever for the StarCast promoters, the people putting on the event. I understand they did what they were told to do by Cody. He pretty much confirmed it in that video. He tried to bury him a little bit too, to be honest with you, but bury
Vince.
No, he tried to bury Starcast and try to put the heat, try to switch the heat, but it didn't work. He didn't say it. He didn't say it well enough for that to happen. So yeah, I hope that maybe one day in the future we can do business with Starcast. I think they do a good thing. I think they put on a great event. They did last year anyway, from what I understand, at WrestleMania. But I just cannot attach myself to anything with Cody and still know what his words did personally to a guy that I look up to a lot in Vince Russo. So Cody, kiss my ass, fuck you, whatever.
Well, if people need further information, if they feel so inclined, you can catch up on all the Generating Heat podcasts in the last couple of days. You can also, Vince Russo's YouTube page. He released his response. And,
epic response.
Yes, oh, my God, it was so entertaining. I mean, I watched it, and I shared it around, and that's how I got some residual, heat or whatever you want to call it from people who – and I just said to these folks, look, give Russo credit where it's due. This video is more entertaining than anything you'll see on WWE or NXT or SmackDown Raw. Anything you see this week, and I'm kind of watching, Raw right now on tape delay as part of a podcast conversation. I'm going to have a Cole later on this week, but any match you see where it's just the typical, okay, we're going to hang the Money in the Bank briefcase over the ring for 6 weeks, and we're going to have sunset flips and, the same type of matches you've seen for 10 or 20 years at this point. But if you watch the Russo, shoot on Cody, the integrity, the passion, and how and I kind of put out I tried to be a little humorous. I put out a tweet today that Vince, I think maybe yourself liked, which was, Blanchard and Gardner are more over than the Golden Lovers in my book, which was and you'd have to catch up on all that because Vince Russo basically was telling a story, not that he had to prove anything, but to kind of explain that it hurt him. It hurt his feelings to be accused of being a homophobe. When he was a child, there was a couple of guys in the neighborhood that were obviously a homosexual couple. And Vince Russo, being a kid in that era, was not, wizened up that these guys were more than just roommates, but they took to him like a son. They took him to movies, and his parents fully trusted these folks. So what Vince Russo was saying, Cody Rhodes, you have no clue that when you're calling me a homophobe, you're accusing my parents of having raised a hateful man who didn't respect, if nothing else, the neighbors that took me to this movie. And this was a very personal story that Vince did not have to tell, but he's a passionate guy. And if people are wondering why the hell does Mike Messier care about Vince Russo all of a sudden, when I really, to be quite honest, I didn't have a big opinion, 2 or 3 weeks ago, it's because Vince Russo gave me my shot. Vince Russo put me on the air for 2 hours in the course of 36 hours. The second was an invite. The first time ever, I think, that, a bucket full of chicken necks had a co-host. He called me as co-host. We talked for an hour. And a good half hour of that, as you know, JG, was my personal life story. Yeah. So a lot of people who haven't seen that interview, and I've got idiots, and I'll call them idiots on Facebook now that are kind of going back and forth. And one moron in particular is telling me that I have no, what's he saying? This moron saying I have no concept of pro wrestling or whatever. And I'm basically like, are you serious? I'm just looking at this moron saying this stuff. This guy has no clue. And of course, what the funny thing is, JG, whenever you go back and forth with someone and you ask for evidence, you ask for history, you ask for citations, and instead they just resort to name calling, then you're dealing with a full-on moron. Yeah. And that's what I'm dealing with on Facebook. And why do I do it when there's bigger things to do in the world, like writing screenplays or walking on the beach or whatever? Who knows? I guess that's my own fault. We're all slaves to the machine that is social media. and the quicker you realize that, the better off you are. But for people that wonder, why do I give a damn about Vince Russo all of a sudden? It's because the guy gave me a shot. The guy let me tell my story. And when I told that story, JG, that you saw and you responded to about the medications and the sinful nature of people obeying a master that is Big Pharma, it's because I'm shooting from the damn hip from my own life. Yeah, and Vince Russo gave me that platform.
And it's brought me close with a WWE guy right now, as a matter of fact. And this guy is in your movie coming out tomorrow, correct? Mikey Bennett.
Mike Bennett plays my brother. Mike Bennett plays Darsaw. Yes, guess who? I named that character, and Darsaw is a tribute to Barry Darsaw. And Mike Bennett plays that character very well.
We'll go ahead and plug that movie. It's coming out tomorrow, I do believe. I saw your buddy tweet about it earlier today.
Well, thank you very much. The movie is called The Manor, and it's got Mike Bennett, a.k.a. Mike Kanellis, and Mike Messier, and Sully Erna. Yes, the lead singer of Godsmack. All those big hits from Godsmack. Sully, Mike, and myself play the Baton Boys. We play hunters, believe it or not, from Kentucky, from West Virginia, and we are coming together up north to New England on a hunting trip. And, our characters have a very interesting dynamic. Darsaw, played by Mike Bennett, is really the stud boy. Like, he's the guy that gets the girl, and when you see this actress, Danielle Goulden, you'll see that she is gorgeous. She is phenomenal. She was the star of another Woodhaven Media movie called Almost Mercy, which is a superstar turned an undiscovered classic, Almost Mercy. Then we have our lead brother, played by Sully Erna, who plays Brett. And yeah, guess what? Named after Bret Hart. I mean, we just took parts of their name. You know what I mean? The characters are not based. Just to be clear for these guys, don't expect any residuals, guys, because it's just a tip of the hat. And I played Ole. Yeah, tip of the hat to Ole Anderson, because when these three guys play, we played like a backwoods Three Stooges with attitude problems. And you see us in this movie, you're going to see a real interesting dynamic. Kevin Nash, Diesel is in the movie. I have a little standoff with Diesel. People can, if they care to, please do. Talking about Google searches, Google Mike Messier, The Manor, Lionsgate. This thing's being distributed by Lionsgate. This is no joke. So when I see morons on Facebook, like the guy I was just telling you about, who says he says, you have zero clue about wrestling or its true history. And the guy spells it's wrong. He spells it IT''S. I want to call him out on that right now. It's so ridiculous, bro, that I'm even doing stuff like working with Kevin Nash and Mike Bennett and even dealing with these morons on social media. But I'm a giving guy. You know what I mean? I want to give back to these people.
But look, man, I appreciate you calling in and kind of putting me over for my decision. That's awful nice of you.
You did the right thing, man. You stuck true to your heart. And what are you going to miss out on, bro? You're going to miss out on sitting in a room with a bunch of other, sweaty dudes. As I say, white guys.
That thing's going to smell like a hog farm up in there.
God, white guys in black T-shirts, Labor Day weekend. Look, I'm sure
we'll be doing it all weekend.
And you're going to be watching. Oh,
that's the worst weekend of the year in Chicago. So you know how bad that's going to be.
Right. And you're going to be having the same old conversation. And I'll be honest, I can visualize this card in my mind. And guess what? I'm sure it's going to be a really good time for the people involved. But you're going to have so many we deserve it chants. We are awesome chants. You deserve it. We are awesome. Thank you, Cody. I mean, I could write the set list for the chants. Thank you, Cody. Thank you, Cody. Thank you, Young Bucks. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Matt. 30 super kicks. Give us more super kicks. Give us more Ryan Satin. Give us more Dave Meltzer. I mean, they should have a Dave Meltzer come out and take a giant bow or a plaque, or he'll come out and he'll give the dollar, to Cody and shake his hand. I mean, I can write the script now.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to super kick after 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 super kick.
It's about 29 super kicks too many. And I just put some information for you about the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. If you're looking to get it to New England, you know, I get you some information. That's coming up June 2nd, which is a lot sooner anyway. And it's all good, man. Look, just to be clear, for those guys, have a great show. 10,000 people. Hey, by any stretch of the imagination, that's an awesome achievement. I just think that they would, believe it or not, they'd reach more people and they'd cause a little bit of a stir if they let a Vince Russo or a JG or a Mike Messier come in there and kind of show the other side of the story. But they don't want the other side of the story. They just want to keep it indie-rific or all-in-rific or whatever they want to call it. So I guess we're all out for us, huh?
So everybody in Richmond coming up this Saturday, we have the two-man power trip of wrestling. Their conference or their convention is going to be right here in South Richmond at the Bells Road Holiday Inn. And up on that card, you're going to have Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Eric Bischoff, New Jack, Mr. Hughes, the Powers of Pain, and yes, you guessed it, the one-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion David Arquette will be in the building. Mikey Ripwreck will be in the building. It's going to be a nice little day of wrestling nostalgia. So it's only $10 at the door to get in. So come on down, bring the kids, get some autographs. I might have a major announcement coming next week. I have a meeting set up with one of the participants of said convention on that day. And we are going to be talking about possibly getting together, joining forces, and doing a little show to go along with what I'm already doing here at Generating Heat. So make sure you stay tuned for that. That announcement coming soon, hopefully. And it's a podcast that has never been done before in the wrestling business. So I'm really excited. I hope that it works out for us to be able to do this. I'll text you the information in a little while. You're going to love it.
Well, JG, thanks for having me on this emergency Generating Heat podcast. For all the listeners, thanks for listening, and have a great night, a great week, everybody. And just take wrestling seriously, but not too seriously, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Take care of the kids, man. Take care of the kids. But
for the future.
Or come out of mom's basement and get the macaroni and cheese, whichever works for you. I heard she makes some good ones. That's what she told me last night anyway when we was laying in bed together. All right, well, Mark, me and Mikey Mike are out of here. We'll holler at you.
Thanks a lot, JG.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.